Okay, students, the reaction that I'm going to be showing you here is reaction number 3 of the stoichiometry lab. And this card here has the details of the chemical reaction that's taking place. It's copper solid reacted with silver nitrate aqueous solution. And again, this is reaction number 3. So you want to turn to reaction 3 in your handout. And I'm first going to talk a bit about the reactants. This is a simple spool of copper wire, kind of a thicker gauge. And what I've done is I've cut a length of copper wire, and then I've used a pencil to simply wrap the copper wire around to create this spiral pigtail kind of situation. And this is so I can compress and get a lot of surface area of copper wire in my solution once I create my setup. So I'm bending this into this shape so that it will fit nicely into a test tube and give me a lot more surface area than I would get if I simply placed it in there with a straight length of copper wire. So there is my copper wire that's prepped and ready to go. And step 2 is going to be to measure out my silver nitrate in order to create my silver nitrate solution. So I have an electronic balance here, and step 1 is we want to zero the balance and make sure that we've zeroed it out before we begin. And then I'm going to place a small piece of paper on the balance, which is called a piece of weighing paper. And before I do that, I'm going to put a little crease in it to make it a little easier to add that silver nitrate to the test tube once I've measured it out. And I'm going to remove my copper wire so I've got my test tube ready and I can pour my silver nitrate into it. This is the silver nitrate bottle. You can see the information on the front of it. And it's a white crystalline solid. And you need to be real careful when you're measuring out silver nitrate because it will stain your hands a dark brown if it interacts with the moisture on your skin. So the next thing I'm going to do is zero out the balance. And I'm going to measure out about between 0.1 and 0.2 grams. And we're at 0.33, and we're going to go ahead and go with that at 0.33 grams. It's pretty tough to adjust it with such a close amount. And I'll also insert some pictures of both of the reactants so you'll be able to see those up close. And now I'm going to go ahead and just slide that silver nitrate right into my test tube off of the piece of paper. And weighing paper is basically like a wax paper so that the chemical doesn't stick to it. And then I'm going to place this back in my beaker, and the beaker's just here to kind of hold things to keep it from spilling. I'm going to set the silver nitrate over here out of the way. And then the next step is to add deionized water, and that's what's going to create our aqueous solution. So I don't need to measure my water because it's simply a vehicle for the reaction to take place. I just want to add enough that I fill the test tube at least 3/4 of the way full and add plenty enough water for the silver nitrate to completely dissolve. Once the silver nitrate is in aqueous solution, then the silver and the nitrate ions become available to react with the copper metal. And this reaction isn't a fast reaction. We're going to give it about 24 hours to go to completion. And this is going a little bit slow here, so I'm going to move it along by going ahead and removing the top of my deionized water bottle and pouring it in. There we go. So I filled my water, my test tube, about 3/4 of the way full. And so now it contains the 0.33 grams of silver nitrate and about 3/4 of the way with water. My silver nitrate has dissolved. I don't even need to stir it. It's highly soluble in water. And now I'm going to add my copper coil. And then I'm simply going to place it back into the beaker and let it set for a 24-hour period in order to allow the reaction to take place. Now the beauty of this being a video is this is going to allow me to insert pictures over time. So in the next portion of the video, you're going to see pictures of the initial reactants so you can see exactly what they look like before placed into the test tube, as well as pictures starting at 5 minutes into the reaction here in a few minutes when I take the picture, as well as down the line up through and including 24 hours. Okay students, so it has been a full 24 hours and you can see our test tube here, and the final picture showed that the solution, and if I put the white background, I don't know if my lab coat's enough, white background behind it, you can see the solution is definitely no longer completely clear. It has a bluish tint to it. You can also see a pretty good view of the silver crystals that have formed. And I'm actually going to come a little bit closer so you'll be able to see those even better as I remove the copper coil. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of slowly agitate the solution, but I want to be careful because metals in general are soft and malleable. So what I want is for these large silver crystals to actually fall off the wire as much as possible without getting them stuck to the sides of the tube. So that's what I've done there. And I'm going to walk back around because the next step I want to do is I need an extra set of hands, which is the purpose of my beaker here, is I'm going to raise my coil up a little bit, and I'm going to use my deionized water bottle to kind of hose off my coil and knock any silver crystals that remain attached to the coil back into the solution, being mindful that I've got to watch my total amount of solution here so I don't overflow my test tube. And I have it, and I've gotten my copper coil pretty clean. So I've removed the silver crystals from it, and now I'm just going to set it aside. We'll place it there on the table out of our way. And now I'm ready to harvest my silver crystals. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is weigh a piece of filter paper, which I have here. So my balance is on and it's zeroed out, and I'm going to go ahead and fold my filter paper just because this filter paper round is pretty large and it's actually a little bit bigger than the balance pan, so I want it to not hang over the edges so I get an accurate mass. So to fold the filter paper, what I did was I first folded it straight in half and then kept it in half and folded it a second time in a quarter. And then I just want to crease it gently. You don't want to crease it too hard because you don't want to make it weak at the crease. But I creased it gently, and now I can place it right on the center of the balance pan. And the mass of the filter paper is 1.45 grams. So this is the mass of the empty dry filter paper, 1.45 grams. Now I'm going to place this filter paper into my funnel, and I've got a filtration set up here. So this is referred to as a filtration apparatus. This wooden piece of equipment here is a funnel stand. It clamps onto the ring stand. This is the ring stand, and I just have an empty 250 milliliter beaker underneath. I don't need to worry about keeping track of the mass or labeling the beaker because I'm not actually collecting the filtrate here, which is what we refer to as the solution that will pass through the filter paper. What I'm concerned here and what I want to collect is the silver. Now I'm just going to use my deionized water bottle to add a little bit of water to the filter paper, and this is simply to get the filter paper to stick in the funnel and stay in there and not pop up out as I'm proceeding through the process. Now I've got quite a bit of liquid here, so I'm actually going to go ahead and pour a good bit of this solution off the top here initially and go ahead and let it run down before I even try to transfer any of that metal, because I don't want to pour it and have it splash and then lose a lot of my sample in the process. Now, filtration isn't a real quick process a lot of the times, but what I can do here is I'm going to lower my funnel stand just the tiniest bit so that the stem of my funnel is actually down in the beaker a little bit more, and then I can touch the stem of the funnel to the side of the beaker. And what sometimes this will do is it will hasten the filtration a little bit. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it can get it moving a little bit more quickly, because what happens is it creates a little bit of capillary action there, because we actually get a stream of the liquid running down the side of the beaker, and sort of, you know, it's like inertia. Once it gets the process going, momentum is the word I'm looking for, not inertia, I apologize. Momentum, it gets it going and it keeps it going, and it has to do with creating that steady stream running down the side of the beaker. And then once that runs down a bit, I'll go ahead and continue to pour off the solution. And this is often referred to as decanting. And in this particular case, it doesn't filter that slowly that I would need to decant some of this off in advance of filtering. I can be patient and wait for it to filter off. You can see we're already getting a pretty good puddle there in the bottom of the beaker. And then once I get this low enough and everything is run down in the filter paper, I can go ahead and then add more. But this process takes about anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes in real time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the video at this point, let the solution go ahead and filter, and then continue on. Now that my solution has filtered down enough, you can see I have about 50 milliliters total of solution that I have filtrate that has passed through the filter paper. Now I'm just swirling this, getting all those silver crystals loosened up so I can do what hopefully will be a quick transfer. Now that shows you what happens in real science. It really stuck to the side there. So what I'm going to do is use my deionized water bottle, try to get it moving, and there, second shot, I got a good bit of it out. Rinse it down again, good swirl around, all in one shot. I still have a little bit that's left behind, and I'm just going to continue this process, rinsing down the inside of the tube with the deionized water bottle, swirling, and adding to my filter paper. At this point, I think we've got it. So now it's just a matter of letting the rest of the filtrate pass through the filter paper. The silver crystals are being left behind in the filter paper, and once all that passes through and my filter paper appears to be essentially dry, it will still be damp, you know, the way a coffee filter feels in a coffee maker. So I'll remove it from the funnel, open it up a little bit to allow it to dry even better, and let it sit for another 24 hours to ensure that the silver crystals are completely dry. And once again, mass it on the balance, knowing the mass of the filter paper and the mass of the filter paper plus the dry silver crystals. I will be able to, via subtraction, determine the mass of the silver crystals actually produced by the experiment, and then compare those to the silver amount that theoretically should have been produced according to my stoichiometry.